Good evening. Welcome to Reflections on East Granby. My name is Mike Malloy and I'll be your host this evening. Our guest tonight is Frank Kilby from Winding Hills in East Granby. After a brief break this summer, we're resuming our taping for the fall season, and we're going to continue to bring seniors from East Granby in to share their stories and reminiscences of life in East Granby prior to. Appreciate you joining us tonight, and as always, you can view this on Friday night at 8 p.m. and it's also available on the internet. The website is www.gctv16.org, and if you go to the View Online menu, you can pull up tonight's program as well as any other program GCTV offers. Let's get started. Good evening, Frank.
Hello, Mike.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. Okay, why don't we start out where we always do. You live at 46 Winding Hills in East Granby?
Even before we start, Mike, let me qualify that my real name is Franklin.
Franklin, correct.
But only my wife and a few close relatives refer to me as that. The rest of the world is Frank, so I'm happy with Frank.
Do you have a middle initial?
H for Herbert.
Herbert. Franklin Herbert
Kilby.
Frank's easier.
You got it.
Okay. All right, so you live at 46 Winding Hills, where you lived for quite a while.
Red Cape, top of hill. We claim to be the highest spot on the hill because we were probably the fifth house that was put into Winding Hills. It was still a dirt road when we moved in, Mike.
Really? Was it farmland before that? Or?
It's hard to believe. Behind us was a cow pasture. Where Coles Park is, a big part of that was cow pasture for either 1 or 2 years.
Interesting. Okay, you were born in 1933, Frank. Where are you from originally?
Well, Weathersfield, Connecticut. A section of that town, which is called Griswoldville, which was back in the 40s, was a lot like East Granby because there were far more cows than there were people. There was some really big farms back in those days. My wife, Barbara, since I've known from second grade, lived the other side of the school, but within a 15-minute walk probably. Okay. But yeah, and good memories of Weathersfield.
So Barbara was also from Weathersfield?
I know her since second grade.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So you grew up in Weathersfield, you were born there. What did your parents do? Your mother, I'm assuming, was a housewife.
Okay, my dad worked for the State Highway Department.
Okay.
My mom was a registered nurse.
Oh, wow, okay.
I had 2 sisters.
Okay.
And
so she held a full profession on top of raising the kids, and that
my mom, it's hard to believe, Mike, but this is what this woman would do to put her children through 2 years of college at least.
Wow.
She was a school nurse in the town of Rocky Hill from 8 in the morning till 2:30. And from 3 to 11 would work in the State Veterans Hospital in Rocky Hill.
Amazing.
But she got each of her 3 kids through 2 years of college.
She made the commitment.
You got it.
That's amazing. Back in that day, it wasn't as common for women to have or relatively full-time professions on top of raising families. So,
no, you're right. Yeah. And a lot of the time we were, if not left on our own, I don't think my mom had to clock in to Hartford Hospital for the 3 to 11 shift, and my dad wouldn't get home till 5, so there was 2 hours, but there was never a problem. You know, we just knew you behaved. It's the way of life.
Yeah, or else, right?
You got it. You got it.
Okay, so you grew up in Weathersfield. You went to school in Weathersfield.
Yeah.
You went through those standard through high school, graduated high school in Weathersfield?
Yeah, it was called the Stephen Mitchell Grammar School at that point. And we went on the Silas Dean, which is long since gone, a junior high, and then in the same building was the senior high. So the entire school system from kindergarten through my senior year was in Weathersfield.
Anything jump out at you from growing up in Weathersfield that you want to share, or anything that you remember distinctly?
It was a lot of fun, Mike. It was during the height of World War II, in the early 40s.
Right.
And different things, like there were anti-aircraft batteries down at Brainerd Field. And as I look back, I thought to myself, well, how are you the Germans or the Japanese going to get an airplane over Hartford?
Right.
The farms, which I love to spend time in because I knew the farmers, and if I didn't get in their way, they'd let me watch them milk cows, and one of them even showed me how to milk a cow.
Yeah.
But it was just really good times. It was 4 of us about my age, and we got home from school, we'd play baseball, 2 on a team.
Right.
We didn't need 9. You just
you did. We made do with what you had, right?
You got it, Mike.
Yeah, that's one thing that's it seems to be a theme from that generation is that the interaction between the people I've interviewed and the old agrarian lifestyle of farming was pretty universal. I mean, most kids lived within walking distance of farms and were kind of pretty experienced in the dynamic of farming.
Especially this section, as I say, of Weathersfield, which was the west side, Griswoldville, which was basically all farms.
Right. Wow. So you grew up in Weathersfield. You graduated high school in Weathersfield. Where'd you go from there?
It was my mother that decided that I should go to junior college. So I went off in 1952 and graduated in June of '54 from Nichols Junior College, which is now Nichols College. It's 4 years, not long after I graduated.
Where is that?
In Dudley, Massachusetts, just over the state line.
Sure. And what was the discipline that you pursued there? What were you?
Business administration, which has been my career path all along.
Okay. And you'd mentioned that you did serve in the military. Where did that fit in?
Immediately. I had taken a draft deferment test, believe it or not, at Holy Cross, and got deferred from the draft in 1953 and 54. But I knew the school the moment I graduated. It had to notify the draft board.
Okay.
That, the fact, Mike, that I didn't really have a career path defined.
Right.
I allowed myself to go on active duty because it was only 2 years, which was a smart move.
There was no active conflict at the time?
No. In fact, taking 8 weeks of infantry basic in the Pine Barrens of Fort Dix, New Jersey, in July and August makes one go from boy to man in
real quick.
8 real long weeks. Yes.
So you had gone through your junior college, and so what age was that you were actually at Fort Dix or started?
Let me see, 54, 21.
21. So
when I went into the Army.
So you were approaching it more as a young man in the military as opposed to like a teenager.
Let me see if I got that right, Mike. From 1933, 20 would be 53.
21.
Yeah, I think it was a year 20.
Yeah.
And then from there, I was shipped down to Fort Lee, Virginia.
Okay.
And I went through a school, 8-week school down there in supply records.
Okay.
Which was a lot of fun because I'd gone north to Canada a number of times with my family.
Right.
Never gone south, never gone really very far west, but I got as far as Virginia. And it's hard to believe, I didn't realize back then how much discrimination existed.
Yeah,
but
different generation.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was in school, so occasionally we'd go out for a pop after school.
Right.
And walking into I'll call it a bar.
Right.
And sitting down where it was empty. And a bartender came over screaming at us, saying, "You can't sit there. That's for the blacks only." And he made us move.
Really?
Well, we were all from the north. We didn't realize this stuff existed.
Yeah, you're the first guest I've really had a real clear-cut discussion about that with. It was kind of vague.
Yeah,
but that's...
we're going a long ways back then.
That was a pretty stark contrast with today.
It came as a shock because things weren't anywhere near that degree up here. They weren't even close. And then from there... Heaven forbid, leave it to Uncle Sam and his infinite wisdom, but I think he shipped me out on December 23rd, I mean, it's not like we couldn't stay at Camp Gilmer till Christmas. And I made that one last phone call to Barbara and said, I'm going overseas.
Right.
And for the next 18 months, I was a proud member of the crack 2nd Armored Division. Now, people will say, why is it crack? Well, at that point, Mike, the Cold War was going full tilt. And I think there was 3 infantry, and we were the 1 Armored Division. And the Russians outnumbered us 10-1.
Where were you stationed?
In Mainz. Well, it's Dexheim, but no one's ever heard of it. So it's just outside of Mainz, Wiesbaden, on the banks of the Rhine River.
Wow, so you were right on the staring at the big Russian bear.
Well, they were a bit further east than we. But I had found out that at one point that our engineering battalion had the explosive to dynamite the bridges over the Rhine in case there ever was an attack.
Wow. And
they had taken those explosives, so they had moved the confidence level that much further east. But as I say, with these 4 divisions, we faced up. And fortunately, there was never any problem. We were the line in the sand, Mike.
So you were, that's going from New England to the south to Germany. You had a lot of exposure in a very short period of time for a young guy, huh? Yeah.
And the beauty of it was, you know, we had to play soldier. We had to do our thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do believe Paris from Mainz, which was basically where we were, was like a 2.5-hour train ride.
Okay.
And you get a 3-day pass once a month, spend 3 days in Paris. And the same idea, Amsterdam, get on the train and go north to Amsterdam. And I got to England, the Netherlands, through Belgium, but by far the trip that I remember most, Mike, is just before I was rotating home. I had a friend who went out and bought an export Volkswagen, a VW Beetle.
Okay.
And export because it had to have safety glass and the same headlights that we have in the United States, not the bulb, the incandescent light.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Far cry from the requirements today.
You got it. And I said to this guy, I said, Al, what do you say we take your Volkswagen on a leave? I thought he'd laugh in my face. He said, yeah, I like that idea. I had another fellow whose wife came over, and they got married. I happened to be one of the, not the best man. I certainly was an usher for the wedding. And she was pregnant after a short time. And the Army would not allow her to go home on a troop transport after her 6th month.
Just in case?
Exactly. If something bad went, they weren't ready to handle a serious delivery problem. So she went home early, and this guy, Don, joined us, and the 3 of us drove from Mainz all the way down the Rhine into Switzerland, Basel, Bern, Lucerne, over the Alps. In fact, got almost over the top of the Alps, and fortunately Al could understand and speak fluent Italian.
Okay.
And he was listening to the radio and said, oh, guess what? There's a snow slide.
Oh, no.
Turn around and go back. It costs us a day.
You don't want to try to forge through one of those in a little beat.
We had to pick one of the passes that was open. And then I forgot how many cities we saw, but we kind of ruined our schedule because once we got to Rome,
you didn't leave?
You got it. Yeah. That was a good, at least 4 days.
Really?
And then got down to Naples, where Al actually had relatives.
Oh, wow.
And they put us up in a hotel, and we crossed the peninsula, came up the Adriatic in this little Volkswagen. I remember one morning, because I was driving, the 2 others were sleeping. And you run out of gas and there's no gas gauge, but there's a handle on the dash. You turn, give you another 50 or 60 miles.
Right.
And we spent our last 2 or 3 days in Naples. And it was just one phenomenal trip. Now we have to beat it home to be back because I think we were gone either 10 or 14 days.
That sounds like one heck of a trip.
It
for
was
you. Yeah.
something to really remember.
What an experience, yeah. I drove a Beetle to Volkswagen Bug to Buffalo once. It's not very comfortable.
I hear you, but when it's the only game in town, now you've got luggage for relative. 3 people and a tiny trunk.
Yeah.
So the guy in the back was crushed by suitcases, but right. You had to do what you had to do.
If you crashed, he'd probably be the only one to survive, right?
You're right. You're right.
So that's great. Yeah. So you through the draft, you experienced the world, really.
And it's interesting because at this point, Barbara's mother had come down with leukemia.
Let's just back up for 1 second, because it sounds like you're already with Barbara. What? Kind of?
Not quite.
Not quite. Okay. All right. So you were commuting.
So I'm counting days to get home now.
Okay.
Because I want to marry this woman.
Okay.
She wrote and said, "Let's get married."
All right.
And I wrote back and said, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah.
So I was discharged on like July 15th. 1956, and we were married August 11th, less than a month later. And Barbara had it all put together, but she was going to make absolutely sure her mother was going to attend that wedding.
I see. So you
and
wanted
it was the following month, following March. This wonderful mother-in-law of mine did pass on.
Okay, that's wonderful that you were able to get home in time to kind of share that.
That was kind of expected. We knew it was coming.
Yeah.
That was not expected. The following September of 57, my dad was working for the state highway department.
Right.
And he was cutting grass on the Berlin Turnpike, and someone who had too much to drink the night before and speeding ran into him, and Dad went within 6 months of retirement.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Fortunately, Mom lived to be 93.
Yes. Wow. That's a tough, well, you deal with it, but it's tough.
Well,
so close together.
At the same time, I had 2 sisters. Oh. And both of those died at an early age, both under tragic circumstances. One in an auto accident, once after result of a miscarriage.
Yeah, you make the most of every day, huh?
But yes, and
so
we came through it.
Yeah, well, you've done a great job. So you're back in Wethersfield, and you've married Barbara, and did you settle down in Wethersfield?
No. By then, we had a 2-room apartment in Wilson.
Okay. South end of Windsor.
This was fabulous. We had a living room, bedroom combination, and a kitchen. And the cute thing, it had a wringer washer, and when you did a wash, it leaked. So you got to mop the floor.
What's a wringer washer? It's a brand?
Come on, Mike.
You mean the kind that you had to turn, or was it?
No. They're electrically powered, Mike, but there's rollers one on top of the other.
Oh.
And it churns back and forth.
Okay.
But then I forgot at home when I was a kid, it was a set tub, but I think we probably just put them through the wringer into the laundry basket.
So you would run it through the wringer to dry it a little bit?
Exactly.
I think I've seen something like that.
To wring them. Oh, yeah, they're real antiques.
Yeah.
To wring them out.
Okay, just to get the most of the water
on the line.
Okay,
right.
Great.
But the cute thing was this washer leaked to the point that we got to mop the kitchen floor every time we did a wash.
Oh, wow. Forced cleaning, right?
Exactly.
The cleanest kitchen floor in the neighborhood.
But we only lived there, all right, from August to March, and that's when Barb's mother passed, and then we moved in with her dad up in Simsbury.
Okay. So you had that. So you're in Simsbury, you're living with Barb's dad, and take us from there. You're back in the States. You're obviously... You were looking for a job. Where'd you end up?
Okay, let me ad-lib at this point.
Sure,
Can I
you fill in the blanks.
I missed a point here.
Okay.
Back in 1954, Barbara's dad had moved to Simsbury to take a job with Ensign Bickford.
Okay.
And I had been invited up for dinner.
Yep.
And it's typical in those days, after dinner, when gas was like 35 cents a gallon.
Right.
You went out for a ride. And
the digestion ride.
You got it. Yeah, Mike.
Relax.
But at any rate, I'm coming down Route 20. I come to the bottom of, I guess you call it Turkey Hill, and you make a right-hand turn, a 90-degree turn. You go 50 feet. You make a left-hand turn, and just at that second turn, there was a brick building, and it was the firehouse, the town hall, the community center with a sign saying, Town of East Granby.
Okay.
And Mike, I said to myself at the time, oh, wow, this is not the town for me.
No.
Having said that, last month was my 50th year
That's
in East
amazing.
Granby,
Yeah.
and I've never regretted a day.
Yeah. First impressions always don't hold.
So then from Simsbury, Mike,
Yes.
Barbara was teaching school in Windsor. I was working at combustion engineering.
Okay.
There was the only way.
Which is also in Windsor, right?
Yes.
Combustion, yeah.
Uh-huh. In 1955, when I was in Germany, the floods came.
That's right.
Tremendous floods.
Big ones.
I think they call it now the 1,000-year flood.
Yeah, right.
It washed out the bridge between Terriffill and East Granby to
Right.
Tunx's, as well as the bridge from Bloomfield over to East Granby. So the Army had put in Bailey bridges, which I was familiar with because being in an Armored Engineer Battalion, we too put in Bailey bridges.
Right.
And you'd have to come out of Terriffill, cross the river, and go along Tunxis Avenue,
Okay.
and then turn left up Spoonville
Okay.
by your house.
Yep, right.
On any rate, at this point, there was a big tobacco barn right where Winding Hills was.
Okay.
And the builder, it's Carl Johnson, who built both Melody Acres and Winding Hills.
Right.
He was the managing builder. He had other contractors that built houses, but
Sure.
he owned the property and so forth. This barn, kind of weird, but Barbara and I drove under it one day, and these houses were being developed.
Right.
And we decided, well, A, it was a house we could afford, but B, we liked what we saw.
Right.
And he wisely pulled the tobacco barn down.
Yeah.
And then Barbara and I, with her dad, went in and we looked at lots, and we got real lucky because we got the prime lot that we now live on.
Okay.
And built a house.
And you held on to it.
And I don't dare say what it cost then, but it wasn't very much.
No.
And then like a year or so later, we put the garage and breezeway on.
Okay.
Now, it's Barbara and I, and we forgot, for one brief period, maybe 6 months, we lived in West Hartford, because that's where my son Steve was born.
Okay.
We moved into Winding Hills August of '59. My daughter Janet was born, she'll never forgive me this, December 26th, just after Christmas.
Okay. The
But
day after.
the inside joke was when Barbara's doctor told me that she was pregnant, I said, okay, understand, I want Barbara home for Christmas, for Steve's first Christmas.
Right.
Dr. Melanconico said, oh yeah, God and I will arrange that for you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've got the movie picture still of Barbara pulling the wagon around the Christmas tree with Steve.
Right.
And at 2 a.m., Janet was born. And I said, hey, Steve was home for that first Christmas.
That's right. Barely.
Yeah, barely, Mike. And then when we found out she was pregnant a third time with Ronald, we knew we needed more room.
Right.
We actually looked at a house in Windsor that was somewhat larger, but we'd already fallen in love with Winding Hills. We liked the neighbors. We liked our house. We decided to come home, and with help from my father-in-law, who was good at these things,
Right.
put the 2 good-sized bedrooms and a full bath upstairs.
So you just expanded where you were?
Yeah, exactly. And in time, Karen, my youngest, came along. So a little bit tight at times with 6, but I mean, two boys in one room and 2 girls in another. But
You filled up the house.
now it's just Barbara and I. We rattle around.
Right. It's like it's elbow room now, right?
You got it.
So you've got, so you're in East Granby. Your first impressions were that it wasn't much of a town. You ended up settling down here.
Only then.
Yep.
Let me go back because as we put the garage and breezeway on,
Right.
and Barbara and I had thought we were bound and determined one day we're going to move back to Wethersfield. This is where our roots were. We were in love with Wethersfield. Now, as you live longer in East Granby, it's nowhere, not quite. But the one thing that really impressed me in those days, Norman Adams was the first selectman.
Okay.
And Norman, I can't believe it, Commissioner of Police, Commissioner of the Road, first selectman, as I say. He wore at least 3 other caps. But what really impressed me, he drove the snow plow during the storms. And we needed a building permit.
Right.
And Norman personally drove it out and delivered it. Okay. And Barbara made a cup of coffee for him. It was a good move on his part because before he left, he had signed up 2 new Republicans.
Oh, no. Okay. So he grabbed when he saw he saw the opportunity and took it. So you when I said that your first impressions weren't that great of East Granby, but as I was just driving through, when you were looking at the house, when you were noticing it as they were getting ready to build the lots and stuff, did you give much thought to what the town was like at the time? It was a small town.
One thing, and that presented a problem to a point because Barbara, as I say, was gone through. Back then, it was Willimantic State Teachers College.
Okay.
It's now Eastern Connecticut.
Yep.
And she realized the value of a kindergarten education. The town of East Granby did not have a kindergarten.
Okay.
For Stephen.
Right.
And there was a cooperative kindergarten where you paid.
Right.
And different mothers took turns driving the kids.
Right.
And it was shortly thereafter that they did put the kindergarten in. Now, in all honesty, Mike, I can't think of an awful lot of downside in East Granby. Let me take
in those days you're talking about.
Yeah. I've got 4 kids that have gone through our school system.
Right.
4 kids, 3 of which have their master's degrees with really good grades.
Right.
And the 4th who's got her bachelor's.
Okay.
So the school system stood them in good stead. Now, I've got to give my 4 kids credit because they didn't work their way through college. They came pretty close to it. Right. But the end result was 3 masters and a bachelor's.
That's super. Yeah, most people from that generation and even today give a lot of credit to the school system in East Granby. It seems like it's been fairly consistent for most people who've lived here over time.
Yeah, the big problem was that, as you know, we have the smallest high school in the state.
Right.
And this presents a problem because even while your per capita expenditure is high, there's probably a lot of programs that we can't offer.
Right.
VOAG, whatever, although I think Suffield would offer it.
We ship them, we can bust this up.
As I remember, when the kids had been going over the years to Bloomfield High, to Simsbury High, and when we moved into Suffield High, and when Suffield High said, no more, we were forced to build the senior high school. Okay. And that naturally represented a dramatic increase in property taxes.
What year was that? Approximately. I'm not asking you for...
I may think, Mike, but I'm not sure. If we moved in 59, 69, I think the early 70s, but it's a guess.
So up until then, we would go to the high school students from East Granby would go to Suffield.
Yes.
That was the final. It was Bloomfield, and you said Simsbury.
Well, long time ago.
Okay.
They went to Bloomfield.
Okay.
Then my brother-in-law's roommate, Mr. Granger, Norman.
Right.
I think it's Norman. Went to Simsbury High.
Okay.
When we moved in, my kids, they were still in grammar school.
Right.
Went to Gordon Granger. It's not Norman. It was both obviously went to Simsbury High.
Oh, okay.
So it was Bloomfield, Simsbury, and then eventually Suffield. And then we tried to lock on with Granby, but they didn't want a co-op school.
Yeah, that discussion seems to have gone on in a variety of different ways for many years. It never quite, East Granby always ended up, for whatever reason, staying fairly independent when it really became a decision to make. So yeah, it does drive up the. If you're going to have a functioning high school, it costs money. So anyway, you have so your kids are going to school in East Granby. You're living in East Granby with your wife, and you've added on to your house. Thinking back to that period of time, or even before that, what do you think has changed the most in East Granby from those early years when you started in East Granby to now? Is there anything that jumps out that's really the most dramatic change, or if there isn't?
I guess if there's one thing that sticks in my mind, because I think in 1987 I was elected appointed to planning and zoning.
Okay.
And there was a tremendous amount of agricultural and not a lot of residential zoned areas.
Okay.
But it becomes obvious that as a farm goes out of business, what they did, and the kids, they don't like the idea of working 12-hour days, 7 days a week. They're not going to do cows.
No.
They just as soon sell the farm for building lots.
Right.
So I think we've had and we've seen the change from agriculture to residential. And one thing that makes sense is they do, shortly after Melody Acres in Winding Hills was built, the town did require a lot larger lots, which made sense.
Right, so it kind of it kept the density to a certain level. So you were well. Now, where were you working at the time? You had
7 years at Combustion Engineering.
Okay.
Until like 59. Okay, until like 1964, because on April of 1964 I joined Hartford Financial.
Okay.
Which specifically Hartford Life Insurance Company, where I worked the next 31 years.
Wow.
And retired May 1st, 1995.
Wow, so you've been retired for 14 years.
Yeah, hard to believe.
Yeah, that's great. So, and what did you do there?
It started out in policyholder service.
Okay.
That's what I was doing originally, even before the life company moved down from Boston.
Sure.
And then I got an opportunity to move in sales administration, which I did for a good many years.
Okay.
And then a further opportunity or transfer into licensing and contracting. And in the end there, my favorite was I was doing a lot of the compliance work for the Hartford variable annuity to make sure that our various sales representatives were properly qualified to sell in all 50 states.
Establishing that everything was...
Right. They had the necessary NASD and requirements. They were licensed with the state and so forth.
Super. So that's another theme. Most of the people in this area, if they weren't employed independently, either worked in something to do with Pratt or Hamilton, or the insurance industry.
Yes, right.
Over. You raised your kids in East Granby. Was there anything that you were that stands out in that regard? I mean, other than you said the schools did them very well. Anything else that you were any memories?
I think the nicest thing is, Mike. Let me regress for a moment again.
Yeah, sure.
When we bought our house, we were personally told by the real estate agent that there would never be any houses behind us. Mr. Coles owned the property, had 4 or 5 kids, and they're going to be great big houses for those folks.
Right.
Within a year or 18 months, that same real estate agent was walking people through my backyard to show them building lots on the Coles property.
Really?
And it was that close to becoming another development like Winding Hills.
Right.
But fortunately, at least for me that is, the highway had just been put in.
Right.
Carl Johnson needed an access. He had one in Winding Hills.
Right.
That was never a question. The town said to him they needed another access over near Hatchet Hill.
Okay.
They didn't want to have to drive a fire engine or an ambulance all the way down to the river and halfway back.
Right.
He never was able to get it. The state told him that if he was willing to shut down, I get this right, the entrance onto Spoonville
Okay.
The builder could then open an access into the new section, into this Coles property.
So south of the entrance to Spoonville? Oh, okay, further
He
up.
had
Yeah.
the access in the south, in Winding Hills.
Right.
It still exists today,
Okay,
the right-of-way.
okay,
The town rightfully demanded another one off Hatchet Hill
right.
because, and it was Norm Adams said, I'm not going to sacrifice.
Oh, that's right. I get that confused because Hatchet Hill is actually north of there.
Right.
It's because it goes under the bridge, it throws you.
And Norman Adams said, I'm not going to sacrifice the people that have lived in East Granby all these years and shut down this entrance to Spoonville.
Right.
For the people that haven't even moved here.
Right.
And the deal fell through. Some years later, Mrs. Cole, who taught in East Granby for many, many years,
Right.
sold at a much reduced price. I do think she could have got a lot more money, but she
Right.
was very kind.
Right.
And between the state, federal government, and the town, they bought 110 acres, which became the Coles property. And over the years, as I say, what was a pasture in some place, I mean, it's logged now. And the beauty of it is, this is, and Dudley, my dog, I forgot Dudley. Before that, Bosco. Before that,
Backyard entrance to 110 acres of really.
and it's more than that, Mike. Because
it's
if I go out and turn left, go down, you start climbing. You're then on, okay, I think Galasso owns it. You get up there a ways, and it's CL&P's property.
That's right.
You get up to the Metacomet Trail.
Yeah.
And if you go left, I haven't done it recently. I'm getting old at 76 to do this. But if you go left, you can look over the Terrifield Gorge. And if you go up there in the fall, when the foliage is out, it's to die for, Mike.
It's beautiful, yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, between the CL&P property, Galasso, and Coles Park, that's a huge chunk of property.
Right, and I don't envision anything ever being built.
Reserved land in the state of Connecticut, for a town.
I think a lot of people don't realize this. This is when we were able to buy the farms.
Right.
When a developer, I can't remember, and he went bankrupt.
Yep.
And when he went bankrupt, he took Suffield savings of agriculture, ended up owning the property.
Right.
And Dave Kilby was the driving force that was able to buy Menace big section.
Yeah, so now in the north end of town and the south end of town is huge chunks of...
And one that's easily missed, Mike, easily missed, is the Newgate Wildlife Management Area off Route 20.
Right,
Because
you're
there's
right,
an awful lot of acreage up there. And again, CL&P there.
Yeah, it's remarkable for, and part of, we have the benefit of being a fairly small town, so those big chunks really take up a big part of it. There's not a lot of large tracts left in East Granby.
In Culbro.
The state did, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yep, no, you're right, yeah.
Bought the development.
There's another huge piece of property that's, it'll be farmed, but it will never be.
Right, but it won't be built on.
Yeah, they've really done a good job in this town of preserving the character. If you were to, you mentioned Mr. Adams prior. That we usually ask of a memorable character. I guess that would be Mr. Adams for you.
Seemed to be capable at each of them. And as I say, when Barbara and I driving the snowplow, or personally delivering your building permit.
No, and that's another common theme for people reflecting. It's a little bit bigger now, but not by too much.
I can ad-lib sound. Heard a clanging noise. Oh, bang, 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 bang. And she called the police, and then we had a resident state trooper.
Yep.
And Norm Adams also, I guess, got the call because of this woman's house.
Right.
And they started to look around, they couldn't find it. But they noticed it. All of a sudden, a clanging noise. The poor skunk was trying to bang his head on the ground to get the key off. And the trooper looked at Norman and said, I don't know what we do now. And this is like 1 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
Norman says, I don't know about you, but...
Okay, so you had, it'd be remiss, Wetlands Commission and Conservation Commission with Frank, so I've heard a few of his stories about anything about that.
Heaven forbid, Mike, I almost forget that. Yeah, because the
you bring it up
effort to support my habit,
right.
Namely fishing.
That's not a bad way to live if you have a real good hobby, though,
and you've got a salmon brook,
yeah,
which is tremendous.
It's
I've just got, this is hard to believe, but I just got Resources Authority.
Right.
Spells out, they're looking for scenic, open and scenic, I think, I can remember the words. Salmon Brook is one of the last true cold water fisheries in the state of Connecticut that has thriving breeding populations of brook and brown trout.
Wow.
Now, I've caught native brook trout where it has to be clean.
Right.
Otherwise, the brook trout won't thrive.
Interesting.
So, and then right in front of my house, I've gone down there and caught some good fish down there.
In the Farmington?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You have a fairly good map in your head of the whole Salmon Brook area. And
the downside is, over the years, and I think I mentioned this recently, the inland wetlands, is that the rose, and it's not the wild rose that's all briars and prickers.
Right.
It's from Route 189 up to Route 20.
Okay.
Traversing the brook.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a path through there that you can? Close to that. Yeah.
Very close.
Oh, okay.
To it. Very close to it.
Yeah.
And I can remember some years ago, they warned the others to get out of this.
I had one send me back about 20 feet one day when I was fishing. It was just about dusk.
Okay.
I didn't see them sneaking up. Boy, that'll scare you when they slap the water. We touched on this with a few other folks. Is there anything in the town's history since you've been here, your 50 years or so, that you think that they could have done, and like I always say to everybody else, hindsight's 20/20, but just a lesson from the last 50 years that they could have done something a little different, or an opportunity to maybe make an advancement that they had to do later, or something along those lines. I guess mistakes over.
In all honesty, Mike, I can't honestly see something that stands out.
That's great. Yeah.
As I say, I know they have a challenge with this high school because it's the smallest high school in the state.
Right.
In fact, I love to tell this story. And Janet went to the principal or the athletic director and said, "We'd like to form a track team."
Right.
And he said, these girls looked at him and said, "We'd like a coach," and he had a coach.
Uh-oh.
And he said, it wasn't long after they had a part-time track coach.
Right.
And I don't know that, and the cute thing was, there were so few on a team. It was like Janet, she was a runner.
Right.
The girl that
experience when you have a school that size and you have to wear a bunch of different hats.
Exactly.
And you have to, it's a different experience than you might.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at the other side where some of the curriculum is a little limited because the funds just aren't available. You can't have everything, but it's certainly the upside is that the personal attention to the kids and the experiences they have related to that is remarkable. Well, this kind of segues off what we were just talking about. If you had one wish for the town, what would it be? If there was something that Frank could say that I would either change or improve or etch in stone so it doesn't change. You see where I'm going with that? Is there anything that you'd like to?
Already told Jim Hayden that. Yeah, I can't really think of anything that sticks out.
It's a pretty practical way.
Yeah, well, it's in particular it's real beat on.
Especially on the
people like myself who are living on what is a relatively fixed income as a senior citizen, seeing our taxes go up.
Yeah.
And yet, I can remember, Mike, when we moved in, we had the same argument with the mill rate. Right. We wanted a school system.
Right.
And you meet rock and the hard spot.
Right.
And as a result, the taxes at least go up some. I think the town has done a very respectable job of holding it in line as well as they have.
I think they've done a lot. They've jumped through a lot of hoops. They've really made it. They seem to have made it work. I was reading somewhere the other day that the tax rate in East Granby is still the lowest in the Farmington Valley.
Is that right?
So it would be considered an industrial base, I guess, over by the airport that we get some taxes from. But they've done a good job. It's not easy.
Oh, I have to agree with you.
There's always a pothole that needs to be filled, right? So you have, okay, so let's take one step forward. You have how many grandchildren?
12.
12. You have 12 grandchildren. If you could summarize Frank's advice, what would that be? Is there anything that is there any theme to something you see that you could share with kids way up there on your, as with probably most people, but your total
yeah, because it's interesting. When I graduated, I had just 2 years of college. Started going nights to Hilliard College.
Okay.
Which soon became the University of Hartford.
Okay, yeah, I never heard of it.
Now you're working your 40-plus hours. And fortunately, I got my degree with, for instance, one of the things that I did, Mike, that I remember, we have a food pantry at South Congregational.
Right.
And there was, I think his name was Rocco, and it was before Geisler's. I can't. And we would then hand the bags out to the member of the congregation and say, fill these bags, bring
right.
back. I went up to Rocco, who was the manager before it was Geisler. And I said, Rocco, I want some groceries. No, Mike, it's for Center City churches. Or Rocco, rather. I said, what I intend to do is to get these bags and go for my own. A week before we were supposed to collect the bags, I walked up front. I said, Rocco doesn't even know me. The thing that impressed me, I took these little baskets and I started to fill them. I got back, he said, those aren't full. He sent me out and made me really fill them.
Oh,
and he
beautiful.
sent one of his assistants out to get a ton of candy.
Wow.
Well, the next Sunday, I had so many. The woman says, you're violating the fire marshal's laws. You can't. I said, lady, I'm not taking these groceries back.
No.
You find the needy, and the needy, which was probably my first love,
right.
and properties, but this she didn't pay me. I
you know, that's a great
guilty.
story to end with, because that's kind of sums up what seems to be the focus of your life. You know, if you care to view it online, and once again, you can go to our website, gctv16.org, and consider volunteering, because this is all volunteers that do all of the production that you see. Thank you, and have a good night.